Hello, my name is Erika Ogier. I am the art teacher at Salem Church Elementary School in Chesterfield County in Virginia.
And I'm Oscar Keys, the Multimedia Teaching and Learning Librarian at Virginia Commonwealth University, where I'm also a PhD student in art education.
And this is Creative Digital Tools for All Art Rooms.
And we are really excited to share some of our favorite tools with you. All right, so just a super quick note about all of our visual media. All images in this presentation were either created by us or our students. In the case of VCU students, images are used with the permission of the artists. And in the case of Salem Elementary students, images are used with parental permission. So yeah, Erika, you want to give them the story about how this research project started?
So, Oscar and I actually lived together for 5 years. And during this time, he was working at the library at VCU, and I was teaching at my elementary school. And we share a love for doing computer arts and digital projects with our kids. One of the things that Oscar's really good at, and fortunately for him, is part of his job, is to find really cool, interesting digital art making tools. And he would come home and be like, look at this awesome thing. And I'd be like, awesome. That's going to take me like 6 to 8 months to get approved if we even have the computers that have the ability to run that.
And so I was starting to kind of get the sense that maybe it needed to change from, oh, these are super cool tools, why can't you use these in your classroom, to more, hey, what kind of cool tools do you need for your classroom and what would work? And so I was like, give me some criteria, give me something to kind of work with. And this emerged as this list.
So here are my 5 criteria that I told him. The first one is it had to be free because my budget was limited as it was, and I didn't really have more money for software or hardware for that matter. I also needed it to be easy to use. I teach kindergarten through 5th grade. And also, it would be nice if it was easy for me to explain as well. I also would prefer for it to be web-based. Downloading software takes forever in my county. So it being web-based would make things a lot easier for me. It also would make it accessible to student Chromebooks, which became a huge thing during the pandemic. No logins required. That is a rule of my county for privacy reasons. So that was something that I definitely needed, was no logins. And I also wanted a wide range of tools. I having 12 photo editors wasn't going to do me very much good. And I wanted to be able to do a wide range of creative activities with the kids.
So that's all good and fine. I found a bunch of tools. We tested them out in the classroom. We kind of had a lot of talk back. And before we even dive into like the list that sort of made our like top 12, we want to take a look at how this actually works out in the classroom. So pass it back over to Erika.
So this is my example of how I use these tools in the classroom, what a lesson looks like. We're going to start with one of my favorite websites, Pixel. I know it looks like Piskel, but it's Pixel, pixelapp.com. What I love about this is that it is a pixel art maker. And it has a wide variety of tools that are actually kind of transferable into things like Photoshop and the Adobe Suite later. But it's kind of streamlined and easy for kids to use. There's layers, opacities, frames, so you can make animations, you can duplicate, you can even export it as a GIF, or you can export it as a PNG sprite sheet, which is really, really awesome, and the kids have a lot of fun with it. So these were the 3 objectives that you would see as part of my lesson plan. The first one was obviously for the kids to create an animated GIF of a pixelated everyday object. I kind of coined this as animating the inanimate. They could pick any object. We started by making the object, and then we would go into actually learning how to move it around. The second thing that we did was we explored the history of animation. I get to tell my favorite story about Edward Muybridge. It's apocryphal, but still, it's a really fun story. And his experiments with with, I'm trying to remember the exact word
Motion
for it.
experiments.
Yes, his motion
Motion experiments.
experiments and how that led to modern cinema. And finally, translating their observational drawing skills into a pixelated digital format. We would start with graph paper, filling in the squares, and that would get them started to translating it into a digital format. So here are the 4 lessons that I usually plan out for this. The first one is, what are pixels? And we talk about how they are essentially squares that make up any kind of digital visual screen. We talk about what resolution is. I get them to look real closely at the screen and see all the little squares. And we talk about the challenges and the exciting possibilities of building out of a square. The second second lesson is all about playing around with the app. Both Oscar and I are really big proponents of letting kids play with the app because they'll find things and learn things that you could walk them through it, but they'll find things on their own. By playing around, I also kind of get them to create their own cheat sheet when it comes to all of the tools. And that way they have something to reference later on. Lesson 3 is Animation 101. This is where we kind of break down what animation is and the fact that they've kind of been witnessing it their entire lives. We talk about Edward Muybridge, the $25,000 bet, and we talk about zoetropes. There's a really great video that Pixar has of a zoetrope, a 3D zoetrope that they have with Toy Story characters. Look it up on YouTube. It's really fantastic. And then finally, I always, always, always plan out a studio day because everything's time-wise not our friend. So a studio day because Lord knows they probably need it. Here are 2 artist examples that I usually include. The first one is Karina Detyar, I believe I'm saying that right, who's a Russian artist. What I love about hers is that it's 2D pixel art in photographs. So it kind of takes these 2D pixel graphic-y creations and puts them in a real life scenario. She also does really beautiful little GIFs for them as well, which is really cool. And then I also usually show them eBoy, which is a collective, US and Germany, and they do all kinds of portraits and big, complex, extensive, like everything from like little tiny figures to big landscapes. Now, one of the most important, I would say, part of our jobs as art teacher is the presentation of the artwork at the end, and that's always something that we are aware of. Well, there's 2 ways that I usually show off this project. The first is with a good old-fashioned Google site. You can easily whip one up. Most counties let you do it just through the Google suite. Whip one up, add the GIFs to it. They're easy enough to upload. You can make a little QR code and you can present that with the other option, which is a sprite sheet. A sprite sheet shows all the frames of the animation in order, and it's kind of a really cool art art object in and of itself. And it's always fun to see the breakdown of each of the frames, along with the QR code, the moving image that you can look up on your phone.
All right. Well, that was a pretty good look at how one of those tools worked. And just so you have a sense, we have materials and artists and different things on the website tool that we're going to show at the end. Now we're going to kind of move into the transition of showing a whole dozen. So you got a baker's dozen, a little extra one. In general, this is going to be the overview for how we've kind of categorized these tools. The first one is going to be image editors, because Erika didn't want 1 million, but there are a couple of different ways that image editors can do different work and sort of identifying ones that touched on different disciplines.
Yeah, I did want some. Yeah.
We're going to talk on animation. We're going to talk on geometric shapes because those tie in so well into math units. We love a good integration. And then our miscellaneous category, which is affectionately known as the and more. And then Erika's going to leave us with some words of wisdom for bringing these tools into your classroom. So with that, shall we kick it off? All right, here we go. Image editors, got to make those images pop. All right, so I think I've got the first one for Photopea, right? Yeah. So Photopea, oh my goodness, what what are wonderful things to say about Photopea? So Photopea is made by a single developer who basically was like Photoshop, but make it free and make it online. This is Photoshop inside
Mhm.
of a browser.
Mhm.
It supports multiple layers, transparency, opacities, and even masking.
Mhm.
You can import images, you can export your images, you can export even PDF and Photoshop files. So even if you wanted to scaffold starting in Photopea
Mhm.
and then bringing it into Adobe later on, that pipeline is possible. But it's just really, really robust. There is one single ad on the side,
Mhm.
but other than that, it's completely free. And I'm going to let Erica talk a little bit about the image that we see on the slide.
So the image here is a we both worked on this particular lesson. It's postcards from space, and it started with photos that NASA has makes publicly available, and we kind of selected a couple for the kids, and they got to play around with moving them and cropping them, and changing them up, and even adding text, going through the real like bare bones basics of Photoshop, which I think is absolutely fabulous because it translates super well into like computer arts that they can do later in middle school and in high school. And then we later took them into Photomosh, which we'll get into a
Yeah.
little bit
And
later.
what's super cool about the NASA images, it's also an opportunity. The librarian in the room's got to say, like, it's an opportunity to talk about Creative Commons, fair
Mhm.
use, and public domain, and introducing these ideas that there are images that we can make things with pretty easily out there on the internet.
Oh, Klecky. So if you were a child of the 90s, you might remember MS Paint. Klecky is an awful lot like that. This site was actually introduced to me by a student teacher that I will shout out. Thank you, Mr. Alex Lentz, who showed this to me during the pandemic. We were teaching online, and it became an absolute godsend. It's a lot like it's not exactly like photo. It's like if Photoshop and MS Paint had a baby. It's a little bit more robust than an MS Paint. There's layering, there's transparency. You can bring in photos, but it's really simple to use. I use this with as young as first grade. I would probably feel comfortable if I was there in person working with kindergarten to use this. But it was really fun for the kids to play around with, and it can download it to a PNG, which is really useful, really, really useful. And the kids had a great time playing around with this. We even during the pandemic, we were all virtual. We did we brought in pictures of blank walls, and we did kind of like an online mural project, which was really cool and really beautiful to do.
And then we have, for our third image editor, we have Photomosh. For those of you who do not know, and I don't know how you would, I am a glitch artist by trade.
Mhm.
That's how I kind of came into art as a digital artist. And Photomosh is a tool that allows you to apply glitch through a variety of different techniques to images and webcam
Mm.
and video even now, which is pretty cool. It allows you to export images, GIFs, and even technically a web type of video file now, which is pretty
Wow.
cool. And what I love about it is it's not just apply filter. There are sliders with the names of the techniques that are being used. So the students are learning things like scan lines and channel shift. So that way they can become curious and maybe explore where some of the origins of that are. I use this as a way to introduce even my higher education students to glitch as a
Mhm.
practice because it's so approachable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's been such a great way to introduce glitch art into the classroom and to also like make filters more complicated and to really talk about like what is the mechanics going on in the background there because it makes it so transparent.
Yeah. And there's something really like across the board really engaging about being able to bring up literally a live video of yourself and like watching my kids love this. Sometimes I'll just like if they have extra time and they have their Chromebook, I'm like, check out this website. And they're like, they love it. They're just taking pictures of themselves, they're taking GIFs of themselves, they're suddenly it's the background of their computer and it's really really engaging for them. And I also love it, which we can explain the picture here as kind of an add-on to a project. So this was part of a collaboration that I was doing with our music teacher, where our kids were actually creating digital music, and in my class they were creating the album art. So this is the album art for one of the for one of the albums that our fifth graders made, and pieced together using I believe Photopea, and then they had the option of bringing it into Photomosh to kind of make it look even cooler.
More digitally.
Yeah, and it would work even to just taking a photo of artwork that they've made
Yeah.
and bringing it in and getting them to take it to kind of a next level, which is awesome.
All right. So now we're on to our 3 animation tools, and this was also a hard list to bring down, but I think we've done pretty good work. So the very first one, so Erika mentioned being a child also of the 90s. I'm technically a child of the 2000s, but I'd like to claim the 90s. But either way, MS Paint also has a special place in my heart. And what I had been looking for was like, I wish I had a way to do MS Paint, but make it move. And that is GIF Paint. Once again, this is a single developer. He is an artist who just made this tool. It's really hard to find through Google search. But GIF Paint's amazing. It supports opacities, transparencies, and onion skinning, which is a really important concept in animation because it's what allows you to see the layer before and the layer after. And so, right, we're always looking for tools that scaffold us into larger processes. I hate software that's a dead end.
Yeah.
Can't stand it. And GIF Paint is just really, really lovely. There's also stamps. So if kids don't feel like they can draw, they can also use these stamps to see the animation play out in effect. But this is from one of my students who is they're talking about animal cruelty. So the next one is Scroobly.
Love Scroobly.
Love a good Scroobly. So Scroobly is part of it's a Google experiment. So those of you who don't know, Google has this experiment lab, which includes things like the Google Chrome Music Lab and different things like that. But Scroobly is actually using motion capture through a webcam to animate a drawing that's been made digitally. What's also cool is you can actually upload images that have been made on white paper. And so you could actually animate hand-drawn elements as well. So if you wanted to have kids draw something on white paper and then you could scan them in, or even just take a photo on your phone and then bring it in, and then the kids can dance in front of the webcam to animate their drawings. It's a great way to talk about AI. It's a great way to introduce concepts of motion capture, but also still connecting something that they've made, possibly even by hand, with technology. And then the next one is P5, and this is a shout out to our friend Luke Meekin, who has this really incredible curriculum. P5 is code-based animation. And it was developed by artists for artists. If you need a digital artist, take a look at Lauren McCarthy is one of the people behind this. And the whole idea was to make interactive art easier to use. We love Luke's curriculum in particular because it's also aimed at younger kids. We would say like 4 or 5, 4th and 5th grade really can do really well with this. This is the sound responsive face tutorial, which I've just had a lot of success with in my own classroom and teaching. But basically what you're seeing is a student making a face out of simple shapes, and then they're making sound into the microphone, and that's creating the animation. So pretty cool. But that's 3 different ways you can do animation. And I'll pass it over to Erika to handle geometry.
So we call this section the geometric because we're working a lot with shapes here. And I like these for a number of reasons, just because shapes is a big part of what I do in the elementary level.
Just learning the names of them.
Yeah, literally, oftentimes. So this is one of my favorites. It's Myoats. It is a website that creates these kind of like mandalas. It uses symmetry, and you have like a pen tool, a paint tool, even an eraser tool. You can set the number of sides, and it basically creates this symmetrical, beautiful, almost like flower shape. Well, it kind of depends on what shape you, but kind of like a flower shape. And I love using this when I begin my unit on symmetry and radial symmetry. The kids have a fantastic time with it. You can change the background, you can change the colors, there's layers, there's opacities if you want to get even more complicated with it, and you can export it to PNG, which is always fun and an easy way to save.
Yeah, and we really like this one over any of the like more spirally fancy ones.
Like there's silk, and there's a couple of other ones, but this one has, I think it has the most tools, and it's super easy to use.
Yeah, and all the the effects are the things that the kids are making.
Yes.
It's not some fancy
Yeah.
program. You know what I mean?
It's not
Like
the
it's
algorithm making it, it's the kids.
it's the kids.
So Vectr, I haven't gotten a chance to use this much, but Vectr is a, how would you describe this?
Yeah, so if any of you have interest in doing design work
Mhm.
or doing sort of like digital art, the big thing that will always come up is the two different types of digital image,
Right.
right? You've got your raster-based image, which are the pixels,
Mhm.
like our Piskel app, which we
Mhm.
love.
Mhm.
And then there are these like weird types of images called vector images,
Mhm.
which are images made out of math,
Mhm.
which is kind of like a dirty word. You know what I mean? And what Vectr does,
Yeah.
if you have any experience with the Adobe suite, Photoshop is like Photopea, Vectr is like Illustrator.
Right.
And much like everyone's eyes probably just rolled when we said that, Illustrator is a little bit harder to use
It is.
and it's really obtuse. And what Vectr does is actually really makes a lot of that more approachable. I actually use Vectr as an alternative to Illustrator in my regular everyday practice because sometimes I just need to make a circle and not cry
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have it scalable. That's the
Yeah.
big thing.
Is that it's infinitely quote unquote scalable up and down. It's what logos are typically made of. My favorite part of Vectr is that it has a built-in tutorial. So if you're just like, wait, what? With everything that we just said, you can go onto their website and it'll walk you through step by step all of the basic tools,
Yeah.
which is not only great for us educators who kind of need to know what we're doing going into a lesson, but you can also just put the kids on it and see what they think about the tutorial. Inspirograph. I like to say that this particular slide and tool, we dedicate this to Dr. Melanie Buffington because she was a Spirograph fan. Inspirograph is kind of what it looks like. It is a digital version of a Spirograph. Again, if you were a kid of the I think it was 70s and 80s, but we definitely had them in the 90s. The little gears that you stick your pen in and you work it around and it creates these kind of geometric E shapes. This is also really great to play with. You have control over the opacity and the brush sizes. You get to pick where you put your quote unquote little pen. You can change the angles, the sides, and you can now, yes, export it to a PNG. Do you want to tell them the story?
Yeah, so so and we'll talk about this at the end, but like many of these tools, this is made by artists, small independent developers who want to have, sometimes they're just experiments, random thoughts. I encountered this as part of the Google experimental lab. It's made by a developer named Nathan Friend, and he was a friend to us.
Yes.
Because basically it wasn't allowed to be used in Chesterfield because of one feature inside of the tool. And I reached out to him and he changed it just for Erika's class.
Essentially. So we got it unblocked because of that.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
so
pretty
everything
awesome.
in this list, I'm happy to be an intermediate to reach out to developers and make sure they keep supporting these tools.
And this is our and more. These are the misfits. This is the miscellaneous. They're really fun. They don't really fit into a particular category. And they're really great. I'm excited about these.
All right, so here's the first one. I mean, technically there's two, but they use the same code, so it's fine. One is called SculptGL and one is called SculptFab. The biggest difference is SculptGL is a little bit more powerful, but the color is flesh toned, and SculptFab is not as robust, but it looks like clay. So we will leave you with that information to do with what you choose as an educator. Just know that you get certain shapes at certain age grades, and we want you to have options.
Right.
But all that is to say is it's a really fun and interactive way to write in your browser, make 3D models. They can export to OBJ and PLY, which supports color, and STL, which can be used for 3D printing. You are noticing that it's jumping. Unfortunately, animation is not included in that particular tool, but if your school does have access to something like Adobe, or you have an Adobe account, and you can launch a tool called Mixamo, which is free, and you don't have to actually own the whole Creative Cloud to use. You can actually animate these 3D models. So I always do like a little monster unit around Halloween, because I think that could be a lot of fun. But this is something made by a middle schooler during a summer camp.
Oh, Bitsy.
Oh, Bitsy. So Bitsy, so I have been looking for the MS Paint of video games for a really long time.
What a tall order.
I'm always looking for the MS Paint of a tool. That's what like the goal is. And sweet Adam Ladeau out on the West Coast was like, I got you. And generated this tool. He comes out of the indie game development community. So folks who are like, but what if, but video games, but make them poetry?
Yeah.
And no shooting allowed. And so Bitsy uses simple pixel art. So you can think of it scaffolding into a unit like Piskel. You have 3 colors that you can pick, and you can create as many rooms as you want to. It now also supports music as of this year, which is really exciting. And you can create text boxes, you can interact with objects, and you can collect things. So there's actually ways to do really simple coding and variables. I have a really robust resource that goes along with this that we have linked onto the website. There's also tutorials out there as well, but it is just an absolute blast. And it's a really, really fun and different way of engaging and working into video games.
Oh boy, this one's my fave. So Emoji-Ink. What can I even say about Emoji-Ink? It is a website that was created by, if you into rap music, an artist by the name of Young Jake, and his big thing was creating celebrity portraits out of emojis. And he has this web-based resource where you can use emojis and kind of create pictures. The cool thing about it is you can just kind of freeform pick emojis and just draw, or you can even import pictures like kind of behind it to kind of go over and trace, which I've used both with kids and they love both of them. The only thing about Emoji-Ink that you kind of take into consideration is you can't really control which emojis are there. So there are some not great for school emojis on there. But what I usually tell my kids is, you know which emojis are not school appropriate. Don't use them. And if you do use them, I will take your computer and close it. And you will do this via hand for the rest of class, which is usually enough to get them to focus on the more school appropriate ones. I've used this with as old as 5th grade and as young as 1st grade. The one on the bottom there was done by a 1st grader, a fellow cat lady in spirit, also the tacos. And I feel that particular artwork in my soul. She's in 5th grade this year. So we just actually used it again a few weeks ago and she was very excited to get back into it. But any age range loves this. And I always have kids going, hey, when can we do that emoji thing again? And I'm like, well, maybe soon. It's really fantastic. All right, so we have some things that we need to think about when we go into these kind of digital lessons. To start off with is you need to think about access. The first thing is, do your kids have access to the site through the district? This is going to take some prep work from you. Our county has like a Google form that you submit everything to, and they can get things blocked or unblocked. You can always check in with your IT person, or if your school has a tech integrator, about how to do this. And be prepared to make your case. If you need to provide a lesson plan, provide a lesson plan. I've had to do that on a couple occasions and really like go to bat for it. Be like, hey, why can't I have this one unblocked? It doesn't have logins. It doesn't have this other thing. Why can't I do that? And usually they're like, oh, okay, and just go. At least in my county, they do sometimes. But you have to kind of do some pre-work to make sure that you have access. The other one is technology. We are kind of lucky enough to be in a world now where a lot of our school districts are one-to-one technology-wise, and all of these work on Chromebooks because they are web-based, which is awesome. If you don't have one-to-one technology, you can always see if you get access to a school computer lab, or you could even partner with your school librarian, which is what I did before we were one-to-one. And shout out to my librarians. They're extremely cool people.
Librarians are pretty cool.
Librarians are awesome. That's where we stand on that, in case you were wondering. Finally, saving. Oh my gosh, I cannot stress this enough. You might think, oh, it's fine. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. No, 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 no. I have done this enough times to know that you have to factor in the saving. You cannot save it for the last 3 minutes because kids are going to get confused, especially young kids, about where to save it, how to save it. You have to budget this into your class time. Um, I usually save the last 10 minutes just for walking them through how to save. And I do this every single time just because, there's a week in between lessons. You need to remember how to do this. I have handouts that I usually put on every table on how to save, especially with sites that I use a lot, and even how to save it into their Google Drive because computers get damaged somehow all the time. So make sure that you're budgeting this into your class time, and creating handouts is a great way to save yourself time in the end.
Right. And I think it's like, and putting it into art teacher language, something I think about a lot is like for digital art, you still have cleanup.
Yes.
And this is the cleanup time.
Yes.
So don't think that just because it's digital art day, I don't got to worry about this.
Yeah.
You got to worry about it.
Yeah, you do. You definitely
It's
do.
invisible.
Yeah.
Mess.
Yes. All right, this is the bummer slide. So here's the kind of trade-off with these things being free, easily accessible, web-based. The issue is that there's no guarantee that these tools are always going to be there. If a site is really successful, there's always a chance it could suddenly be behind a paywall and you have to pay for it, or do a login and suddenly you can't use it anymore. A developer could lose interest, especially if it's a one-person pony show and they lose interest, they aren't making money on it, they can't sustain it, and it kind of goes to the side. Google Chrome could think it's a virus for some reason.
Just that day.
Just that one particular morning. It could have been working that morning, and all of a sudden the next class period, it's not working. You got to be prepared for that. The county could push through an update, and because this has happened to me, sometimes at the beginning of the school year, they'll just kind of reset everything, and suddenly it's like, oh, all these websites are blocked, and I have to go through and unblock it again. I would always check at the very least, the week before. I would say probably even further back than that, to make sure that all your sites are not blocked. Also, ATB, always take backup. Have a backup site or activity in mind in case it doesn't work. There's usually some kind of, if it's not a backup site, an activity like an analog kind of activity that you could use. For instance, with the Pixlr, I usually have graph paper for that reason, in case the Wi-Fi goes out. Maybe they're testing and suddenly I can't get on the internet, which has happened before. I usually just break out the graph paper and the colored pencils, and we practice.
Yeah. And we've tried to we're going to be sharing some resources here in a bit. And a couple of things that we've tried to address this by is by trying to make sure we're identifying tools that have these open source values that are made by developers who are these are fun experiments for them. They're not looking to make money off the tools.
Right.
Typically, if they have a successful job.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I did this for fun. Those are the ideal tools that you're kind of looking for, like GIF Paint and Inspirograph come to mind for those reasons. Or Photopea even, because that dude just hates Photoshop and Adobe, and that's why he makes that.
Yeah.
And then the other one too is we have provided a couple of additional backup sites and different ideas there. So, and you might be curious and want to stay up to date on some of this. So we've made a resource. Erika did a beautiful job with this Google site. That's all her. And part of this is also to help take to your IT people to make the case. You can find tutorials, you can find some lesson plans, you can find alternative websites for the ones that we have. And you can check that out using this QR code or click on the link. It's a cute little bit.ly on the website. And you're also welcome to reach out to us to get things added to it. This is one of our ongoing research projects. We're really dedicated to this project. One, because we just we just love collaborating. And also it has such a high impact.
It really does. It's probably our highest impact research project that we have. And also we're always looking for new tools and to check out and see if they'd be a good fit for the site. And we keep it as updated as we possibly can. One final word of wisdom from me is, don't forget, we're art teachers. things can go awry. Things can go awry with, a regular painting lesson. So, if something goes awry with a digital lesson, don't forget you have all the creative tools that you need, glitches and all.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And please definitely reach out. Our contact information is up there on the screen.
Mhm.
And just know that we're always happy to take questions or if people have curiosities or you find something very cool and want to share it. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for watching our presentation. We really appreciate it. We love this project a lot, and it means the world to us that you would come in and see how cool these tools are.
Go make some digital art, y'all.
Yeah!